Move. Move your old self out of the way. This is a commercial airline, not a charity shuttle. The voice cracks like a whip across Gate C14, loud enough to make heads turn and lips purse. A few people look away fast, like witnessing cruelty is contagious. Bernice Coleman, 72, stands frozen for half a breath, her hand wrapped around the curved handle of her cane. She's an elderly black woman with deep brown skin, silver hair tucked beneath a simple church scarf, and eyes that hold the tired steadiness of someone who has outlived too many storms to panic in rain. She isn't loud, she isn't flashy. Her clothes are neat, modest, coat buttoned, leather folder hugged to her chest. But the man barking at her doesn't see dignity. He sees a target. He strides toward the boarding lane in full uniform, captain's jacket, shoulder stripes sharp as knife edges, like the gate belongs to him personally. Captain Grant Hale, 45, white, clean-cut, and broad-shouldered, wears authority the way some men wear cologne, heavy, undeniable, meant to fill every inch of air around him. His eyes flick over Bernice, her cane, her scarf, her calm, and his mouth twists with contempt. He points two fingers at the stanchion ropes like they're courtroom evidence. You trying to sneak into priority? You people always do this. Playing confused, blocking the lane, fishing for sympathy. He leans closer, voice dripping sarcasm. What is it today? A miracle? A sob story? A lawsuit? Bernice blinks once, slow. Around them, rolling bags pause mid-step. A teenager's phone lifts an inch, then lowers again when his mother taps his wrist. Bernice's voice is quiet, measured. Sir, I'm not trying to sneak anywhere. I requested wheelchair assistance. It never arrived. I'm standing here so I don't fall. Hale scoffs like her words are lint. Wheelchair assistance? For what? So you can cut the line and act important? He looks her up and down. Again, then snaps his gaze toward the gate agent. Why is she even here? Put her back where she belongs. The gate supervisor, a woman with a glossy bun and a tight smile, doesn't correct him. She glances at Bernice's boarding pass, then at Hale, and her eyes harden in agreement. Ma'am, the supervisor says, too sweet to be sincere, you need to step aside until we can verify your situation. Bernice's fingers tighten around her leather folder. She exhales, not angry, disciplined. I already verified it when I booked. It's in the system. Hale laughs, sharp and ugly. Oh, it's in the system. Of course it is. Everybody's got something in the system now. He shakes his head, then mutters a phrase under his breath. A racist slur, hissed like poison, low enough that some pretend they didn't hear it, but loud enough that Bernice does. The world tilts for half a second. Bernice's face doesn't crumble. Her eyes don't water. She simply lifts her chin 1 inch, and the silence around her becomes a kind of armor. A man in a suit near the window shifts uncomfortably. A young flight attendant at the edge of the gate freezes, torn between training and conscience. Bernice speaks again, gentle but firm. Captain, I heard what you said. Hale's smile is cruel. Then hear this too. I don't want you causing problems on my flight. I've got a first-class cabin to run, and I'm not about to let drama spill into it because someone wants attention. He says first-class cabin like it's a sacred space, and Bernice is a stain. Bernice slowly lifts her boarding pass so he can see it clearly. Economy. Row 28. I'm not in first class, she says, and I'm not drama. I'm a passenger. Hale's nostrils flare. Passenger? You're a risk. I've seen your type. Complaining, recording, threatening to call somebody. Then the airline's paying out because someone felt disrespected. Bernice's voice remains steady. I'm asking for assistance that your own airline policy offers. The gate supervisor's smile tightens. Our airline policy also allows us to refuse boarding for disruptive behavior. Bernice turns her head slightly toward the supervisor. What disruptive behavior? Standing with a cane? Asking for the service I requested? Hale steps closer, invading her space, towering over her cane like he wants to snap it with his boot. "Don't play smart with me," he snarls. "This is my plane, my crew, my call." Bernice doesn't step back. She shifts her cane tip to steady herself and says, quietly, "Sir, this isn't about your ego. It's about my passenger rights." That phrase, passenger rights, lands like a match near gasoline. Hale's face reddens. "Oh, here we go." He throws his hands up theatrically to the watching crowd. "Everybody listen. We've got a legal expert at the gate. Next, she'll be quoting the Constitution and demanding a parade." A few people chuckle nervously, reflex laughter, the kind people use to avoid becoming the next target. Bernice turns her gaze outward, not begging the crowd, not pleading, just looking, as if asking them silently, "Is this who we are now?" A young woman seated near the charging station, Maya, an airline analyst flying standby, watches with wide, unsettled eyes. Her fingers hover over her phone, not recording yet, but ready. Something inside her is calculating. This isn't policy. This is cruelty wearing policy like a costume. Bernice opens her leather folder. Inside are papers, neatly arranged, tabs and notes. Not flashy, not threatening, just prepared. Hale notices and scoffs. "What's that? Receipts? A complaint script? A little folder of gotcha papers?" He leans in again, voice like gravel. "Let me save you time. Nobody's going to care." Bernice's eyes lift to his, calm, unshaken. "They should." Hale's lips curl. "Lady, you're about to learn the difference between how the world should work and how it does." Bernice closes her folder softly, like sealing a promise. Then, under her breath, not for them, but for herself, she whispers a line her grandmother used to say in the hardest moments. "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." Hale hears the whisper and snorts. "Save your prayers. Step aside." Bernice doesn't move. Not in defiance, just in truth. And Maya, watching from the seats, realizes this isn't going to end at Gate C14. Because when a company hides cruelty behind policy, the truth doesn't disappear. It multiplies. If you have ever been judged by your face, your age, or the way you look in a line, then what happens next with Captain Hale will make your blood boil. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and stay with Dignity Voices to follow how quiet power turns humiliation into justice. Because while the airline thinks they just handled a problem, Bernice is about to make one phone call that cracks their entire reputation machine. The scanner kept chirping, green, green, like the gate could pretend nothing happened. Behind the podium, the supervisor typed fast, eyes never meeting Bernice's. The words on her tablet were the kind that could ruin a person with a single copy-paste. Agitated, refused direction, potential safety concern. Maya watched the screen glow and realized it wasn't documentation. It was premeditation. Bernice stood near the wall, cane planted, folder held close. She wasn't blocking the lane. She wasn't raising her voice. She was simply there, refusing to vanish. Hale reappeared at the jet bridge entrance, speaking to a flight attendant in a tone that made the woman's shoulders tense. He glanced at Bernice and smirked. "I'm not starting my flight with a problem," he said, loud enough for the podium to hear. The supervisor nodded like she'd been trained to agree. "Understood, Captain." Bernice lifted her chin. "Excuse me, I'd like to speak with the duty manager." The supervisor gave a slow, mocking smile. "The captain has already decided." "I didn't ask for the captain," Bernice replied. "I asked for the duty manager." A few passengers slowed, curious. Most kept walking. Silence was safer. Maya moved before she could talk herself out of it. She stepped beside Bernice and lowered her voice. With the airline. Back office. I saw what he said." Bernice studied her for a beat. "Then you know what they'll write about me." Maya swallowed. "Yes." "Make sure it's true," Bernice said. The supervisor snapped her head toward Maya. "You're not on duty. Step away." "I'm not interfering," Maya said, voice shaking. "She requested assistance. That's not—" The supervisor cut her off and turned her attention back to Bernice, voice suddenly syrup-sweet. "Ma'am, you're creating a disturbance." Bernice's calm didn't move an inch. "By standing still?" The supervisor's smile dropped. "Security, please come to C14. The word security did exactly what it was meant to do. Heads turned. Whispers started. People looked at Bernice like she'd done something wrong just by being watched. 2 officers arrived and stopped near the rope line, arms folded, waiting for a reason. Maya's hand tightened around her phone. She started recording, low, quiet, capturing the supervisor's voice and the staged posture of "stand by" before Bernice had done anything at all. Bernice eased into a seat, careful, controlled. She placed her folder on her lap and folded her hands over it, like she was guarding something sacred. Minutes passed. Boarding continued. The gate emptied. Finally, the duty manager arrived with tired eyes and a practiced smile, the face of someone who solved problems by making them disappear. The supervisor rushed to him. "Captain reports she's refusing to comply. Safety concern." The manager looked at Bernice. "Ma'am, tell me what happened." Bernice stood with her cane and spoke evenly, like testimony. "I requested accessibility assistance. It didn't arrive. I asked why. The captain insulted me. I have not raised my voice. I want to board the flight I paid for." The manager glanced toward the jet bridge. "Captain has authority on his aircraft." Bernice nodded once. "And you have responsibility for this gate." He exhaled, irritated. "We can rebook you later today and offer a voucher." Bernice's eyes held steady. "I'm not trading my dignity for a voucher." The manager's smile flickered. "Ma'am, let's not make this bigger than it needs to be." Bernice opened her folder and slid out one sheet. Reservation details and the accessibility request, clearly listed. She held it out, without shaking. "This is already big," she said softly, "because you're using airline policy to cover disrespect." He took the paper, scanned it, and then asked, "Your name?" "Bernice Coleman." He typed it into his tablet. Something subtle crossed his face, like a warning light he didn't understand. He looked up too quickly. Then Hale strode back to the podium, jaw tight. "Are we done?" The manager stepped between them, voice firm but cautious. "Captain, she boards. We're not escalating this at the gate." Hale's eyes narrowed at Bernice. "Fine." But the word sounded like a threat. He leaned toward the lead flight attendant and murmured something Maya couldn't hear. The attendant's expression tightened, fear mixed with obedience. Bernice walked toward the boarding lane, cane tapping lightly. The security officers drifted behind her, close enough to remind everyone who held power. Passengers still waiting watched, uneasy, like they were witnessing a lesson, not a situation. At the jet bridge doorway, Hale stood like a bouncer at a private club. He leaned in, voice low so only Bernice could hear. "You say one thing I don't like," he whispered, "and you're gone. And this time I'll make sure the whole cabin understands why." Bernice met his eyes, calm as stone. "I'm here to fly." Hale's smile widened, because he liked fights he could control. A few passengers near the first-class curtain line had turned to look, eyes curious, some amused, some uneasy. Someone whispered, "What's going on?" Another muttered, "Just sit down." The lead attendant hovered with a forced smile, palms open as if calming an animal, not welcoming a paying customer. Bernice felt the weight of attention press against her shoulders, and still, she kept her voice soft, her steps careful, her dignity intact. He stepped into the doorway, lifted his voice so the cabin could hear, and turned the moment into theater. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "we have a passenger who refuses to follow instructions." Maya's recording caught every syllable, and Bernice took one step onto the aircraft, right into the spotlight he was about to weaponize. If you have ever been labeled a problem just for asking for basic respect, then what happens next with Captain Hale will make you furious. Don't forget to like and subscribe and stay with Dignity Voices to follow how truth breaks the loudest lies. Because in the next moment, inside that cabin, Hale won't just insult Bernice, he will try to publicly erase her with one humiliating command. And Maya's camera will capture the exact second the airline's cover story begins to crumble. The instant Bernice steps onto the aircraft, Captain Hale turns the doorway into a courtroom. He doesn't glance at her boarding pass. He looks at her like she's something stuck to his shoe. The first-class cabin glows behind its sea. Curtain, quiet, polished, protected, while the front rows of economy hold their breath. Hale lifts his chin and projects down the aisle. Ladies and gentlemen, we're dealing with a compliance issue. We'll resolve it fast so we can depart. His tone is syrup over steel. Bernice steadies her cane. I'm here to sit in my seat, she says. That's all? Hale's mouth curls. No, ma'am. That's never all with people like you. Always a scene, always a camera, always a complaint. He gestures at her cane with a cruel little chuckle. What is that? A prop? You want us to roll out the red carpet because you can't keep up with the line? His sarcasm is sharp enough to cut, and it carries an old, ugly message that her age is inconvenient and her presence is a burden. A woman in 3A clutches her pearls and murmurs, "This is unbelievable." But she doesn't stand. A man in 2D smirks as if he's watching reality TV. Somewhere farther back, a veteran in a hoodie shifts in his seat, torn between stepping in and staying invisible. The cabin becomes a mirror. Courage in a few eyes, cowardice in many. The lead flight attendant steps forward, palms open. Captain, she's boarded. Let's just... Hale flicks his fingers at her like a nuisance. Compliance issue. He points at Bernice's folder. What's that? Your little lawsuit kit? This is a commercial airline, not your stage. Bernice turns so the cabin can hear. I requested accessibility assistance. It never arrived. I asked for help. That's not a scene. That's a service. Maya sits 3 rows back, phone low, recording. Her thumb trembles, but the frame stays steady. The stripes, the posture, the way authority becomes bullying when it thinks it's safe. Bernice adds, calm. Passenger rights exist for moments like this. The word rights lights Hale up. He pivots to the cabin, mockingly raising his hands. Everyone, listen. She's about to teach us law. Maybe she thinks she belongs in the first-class cabin, too. A man peeks past the curtain, amused. Another stares forward, jaw tight. Bernice takes a careful step. Hale shifts to block her, shoulders squared. No, you don't move until I say you move. The attendant's voice cracks. Captain, please. Please? Hale scoffs. Quiet is what she should have been her whole life. He spits the sentence, then leans in, low and venomous. You people love playing victim. You show up, slow the line, demand special treatment, then act shocked when the world doesn't bend. Bernice's gaze doesn't flinch. I'm asking for basic respect. Respect is earned, Hale snaps. Humanity isn't, Bernice replies. The cabin shifts. A teenager lifts a phone higher. Someone whispers, "Record!" Hale hears it and barks. Put the phones down. This is not a circus. But it already is, because he made it one. Bernice asks, quiet and precise, Are you preventing me from reaching my seat? I'm preventing a disruption, Hale says louder. Airline policy allows removal of passengers who refuse crew instructions. Bernice tilts her head. Then state the instruction I refused. A hard, awkward beat. Hale chooses theater instead of truth. Ma'am, you're being confrontational. Bernice answers, You're being cruel. Hale's face reddens. That's it. He points to the jet bridge like he's throwing away trash. Get out. Bernice doesn't move. More disbelief than defiance. Hale explodes, shaking the cabin with his voice. Get out! Off my aircraft! Now! A child cries. A mother hushes him, eyes wide. The first-class curtain trembles as more faces look. Bernice's throat tightens, but her voice stays even. "You are humiliating me in public." Hale smiles coldly. "You humiliated yourself when you decided to test me." The lead attendant steps in, pleading. "Captain, please, let her sit." Hale's eyes cut to her. "Do you want to be next?" The threat works. She retreats, shame on her face. Hale slaps the intercom. "Security to the aircraft, non-compliant passenger." Two airport officers arrive quickly, hands hovering near belts. One looks at Bernice, then at Hale, uncertain. Bernice turns to them. "What instruction did I refuse?" Hale answers for the officer. "She refused to comply." Bernice says, "That's a label, not a fact." Phones are up now. Hale's confidence flickers as he realizes this won't disappear. Corporate negligence can hide in memos, but today it's living in camera lenses. When the officers appear, the aisle feels narrower, like the plane itself is leaning toward a verdict. Bernice can smell the stale coffee on one guard's breath. She notices the way Hale keeps his hands relaxed, confident the badge will do the dirty work. Maya zooms slightly, catching the captain's satisfied smirk for the record, too. The officers step closer anyway. "Ma'am, we need you to come with us." Bernice nods once, not agreement, but control. She faces the cabin. "Some of you will forget this by dinner. I won't. Not because I want revenge, because I want truth." Maya's eyes sting. She keeps recording. Bernice whispers, "The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." Then she walks, cane tapping a slow rhythm, escorted off the plane while Hale stands tall, pretending he saved everyone from danger. At the threshold, he mutters, "Problem solved." Maya captures that too. She saves the video and names the file with two words that feel like thunder: legal accountability. If you have ever been humiliated by someone in power, then what happens next will make you furious. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and stay with Dignity Voices to see justice hit the system. Because while the airline rushes to bury this with policy language, Maya is about to uncover proof this wasn't one bad captain. It was a protected pattern. The corridor outside Gate C14 smelled like disinfectant and burnt coffee, clean air trying to erase a dirty moment. Bernice sat on a vinyl bench under a poster that promised, "We care about your journey." Her cane rested against her leg. Her leather folder lay closed on her lap, as if keeping her composure sealed inside. A few yards away, the duty manager and the gate supervisor huddled over a tablet with their backs half turned toward her. One airport officer typed into a handheld device, calm and methodical, as if he were logging a delayed suitcase instead of a public humiliation. Overhead announcements kept going. Boarding groups, final calls, a soundtrack for pretending. A shadow crossed the bench. Maya stood there, breathing too fast, phone in one hand, laptop bag in the other. "Mrs. Coleman?" she whispered. Bernice lifted her eyes. "Yes?" "I recorded it," Maya said. "Everything from the aisle. I'm sorry I didn't stop him." Bernice's voice stayed soft. "Most people don't stop a storm. They just hope it doesn't hit them." Maya's throat bobbed. "They're labeling you non-compliant." Bernice's gaze flicked toward the manager's screen. "So, the lie can travel." Maya nodded. "That tag follows you. Future bookings, gate agents, even how crews treat you. It's a checkbox that turns you into a problem before you speak." Bernice nodded once. "So, the lie becomes a passport." Maya lowered her voice. "It's not just today. I work in internal analytics. Captain Hale has complaints, multiple. But they get closed the same way, same wording, same signatures." Maya unlocked her phone and showed a screenshot. Incident flags in tidy rows. Closed. Customer misconduct. No further action. Resolved at gate. Passenger refused instructions. The same phrases repeated like a script. "Same manager sign-off," Maya said. "Same outcome. He's protected. By policy, Bernice murmured, or by people hiding behind policy. The gate supervisor approached, wearing a smile like a mask. Ma'am, we can rebook you. We can offer compensation. Bernice didn't look up. I want the truth, not a voucher. The supervisor's eyes slid to Maya. This doesn't involve you. It involves what I saw, Maya replied. The supervisor's smile tightened. Then she turned and walked off. Maya exhaled. PR will move fast. Bernice's phone buzzed. A news alert popped up. Elderly passenger removed after dispute with captain. The headline was careful, neutral, built to make cruelty sound like a misunderstanding. Maya stared. How is that out already? Because they practice, Bernice said. Maya's fingers hovered over her phone. If I send the video, they'll say it's edited. Bernice studied her. Do you have proof it's a system? Maya hesitated, then nodded. There's a playbook, training documents on how to control optics. Show me, Bernice said. Maya opened her laptop on her knees. Airport Wi-Fi crawled. A corporate login demanded a code. Her phone buzzed a security prompt. Maya's hand shook as she approved it anyway. Folders loaded. Crisis templates. Brand protection. Customer resolution. Maya clicked and froze at a header that made her swallow hard. Customer resolution playbook. Protecting the brand. She scrolled, reading aloud in a strained whisper. If a passenger escalates emotionally, redirect the narrative towards safety and compliance. Use standardized terms to ensure consistent outcomes. Avoid admissions. Bernice's eyes didn't blink. Maya scrolled again. In high-visibility incidents, identify the passenger as disruptive early. If filming occurs, de-escalate verbally while documenting noncompliance. Prioritize on-time departure. Bernice let out a slow breath. So, they teach employees to build a story first. Maya's cursor dropped to a section titled Recommended Phrasing. Bullet points appeared. Passenger refused crew instructions. Passenger became confrontational. Staff felt unsafe. Passenger requested special treatment. That's what they'll write about you, Maya said. That's what they've been writing, Bernice replied. Maya scrolled to a paragraph about profile indicators. The language was polished and coded. Maya looked up. They don't say race, but it's there. Bernice's jaw tightened. Corporate language has always been clever. Maya's laptop chimed with a new internal alert. Crisis response. Talking points. Draft. She clicked, and the statement filled the screen like a verdict. We regret the inconvenience. Safety is our priority. Passenger removed due to non-compliance with crew instructions. Maya's face drained of color. They're pushing it right now. Bernice rose slowly, Kane steadying her. Good. Maya blinked. Good? The louder the lie, Bernice said, the more brittle it becomes. She opened her leather folder and pulled out a small notebook filled with neat handwriting. Names, numbers, dates. She chose one number and dialed. Maya heard only Bernice's calm voice. Hello. Yes, it's me. I'm at the airport. No, I'm not hurt. I'm insulted. A pause. I need counsel on standby, and I need our acquisition team to move up the timeline. Today. Maya's breath caught. Acquisition. Bernice covered the phone for a second. Someone who answers when I call, she said, then continued. Monitor the market. If the board panics, they'll leak. If they leak, we'll know where to press. She ended the call and slid the notebook back into her folder. Maya stared, stunned. You're not just a passenger. I came to travel, Bernice said. But if they want to turn cruelty into procedure, we'll turn procedure into consequence. Maya swallowed. What do you need from me? Send me everything, Bernice said, pointing to the laptop. Playbook, talking points, the dashboard screenshot. Keep your own copies safe. Maya's hands moved fast, downloading, saving, labeling. Maya created 2 backups, one to an encrypted drive, one to a private email draft she never sent. Her pulse finally slowed when the files finished uploading. In the distance, Hale's flight pushed back from the gate. Bernice watched the tail disappear and said almost tenderly, "Now we let them talk. Then we answer," with receipts attached. Outside the windows, another plane lifted into the sky. Inside the terminal, the airline still looked polished, still smiling, still pretending. But the system had just confessed, and Bernice had just moved the timeline forward. By the time Bernice and Maya reached the quieter end of the terminal, the airline had already done what it always did. When truth threatened the brand, it spoke first. Maya refreshed the feed and the statement appeared crisp as ice. "Safety is our priority. A passenger was removed due to non-compliance with crew instructions." Maya's jaw tightened. "They're turning you into a hazard." Bernice sat at a cafe table near the windows, cane hooked on the chair, leather folder centered in front of her like a file awaiting court. She didn't look shocked. She looked familiar with this kind of sentence. Reasonable on the surface, destructive underneath. "Let them," Bernice said. Maya blinked. "How can you say that?" "Because it's predictable," Bernice replied. "And predictable things can be answered." Maya opened the video again. Hale's stripes, his voice, the command, "Get out." Then the mutter at the threshold. Problem solved. It was all there. Clean audio, steady frame. She set the laptop beside the memo. The customer resolution playbook. The bullet points. About safety and compliance. The standardized phrases meant to bury a passenger under paperwork. "It's a machine," Maya whispered. "Not just him." Bernice's gaze drifted beyond the glass to the moving planes. "Machines don't repent," she said. "They stop when they meet something stronger than momentum." Maya lowered her voice. "Who did you call?" Before Bernice answered, her phone rang. She took it immediately. "Yes," Bernice said. A calm, urgent voice filled the speaker. "Mrs. Coleman, the airline statement is live. Sponsors are asking questions. The board chair wants to resolve privately." Bernice's tone never rose. "Private is how they keep doing it." "We can respond," the voice said. "But if we respond, it becomes public." "It already is," Bernice replied. "Proceed with facts. No theater." Maya watched, stunned, as Bernice ended the call like she'd just confirmed an appointment. Maya's hands shook slightly. "You sound like you've done this before." Bernice looked at her gently. "I've watched people hide behind polished language my entire life. I learned early, if you can't change the heart, change the rules." A man approached their table, tall and quiet, dressed in a plain gray suit. He carried a slim laptop and a folder with no logos. "Mrs. Coleman?" he asked. Bernice nodded. "Daniel." Maya's eyes widened at the familiarity. Daniel set the folder down. "We have a secure room. Your files are time-sensitive." They moved through a service hallway into a small conference room behind the lounge. The door shut, and the terminal noise thinned to a distant hum. Daniel opened his laptop and rotated it toward Maya. "First," he said, "we protect you." Maya tensed. "They'll come after me." "They might try," Daniel agreed. "So we make it costly." He slid a document across the table. Representation terms, whistleblower, language, and a chain of custody protocol for the memo and video. Everything was already drafted, as if someone had been waiting. Maya's voice cracked. "Why would you prepare this for me?" Bernice answered softly. "Because conscience should never be punished for speaking." Daniel clicked to another screen. Boxes and arrows, corporate names, a structure chart that looked like a blueprint. Maya leaned in, confused. "What is that?" she asked. Daniel chose his words with care. "A holding structure, quiet purchases over time, a cooperative investment group." Maya's mouth went dry. "You're buying the airline?" Bernice didn't smile. "We were," she said. "For stability, for roots, for jobs. We plan to negotiate reforms without spectacle. Maya stared at the chart, then at Bernice. And today changed it. Bernice nodded once. Today exposed the rot. Rot spreads unless it's cut out. Daniel opened a second file. Debt covenants. Sponsor clauses, board pressure points, a timeline of meetings. It was chess, not revenge, lawful leverage and consequences. The board will panic as the valuation falls, Daniel said. They'll seek a rescuer. We can be that rescuer. With conditions. Maya swallowed. What kind of conditions? Bernice reached into her folder and pulled out the printed accessibility request, the simple proof that had been ignored. She placed it on the table, not dramatically, just plainly. Conditions that protect people, she said. Conditions that make it harder to weaponize policy. Conditions that make non-compliant mean something measurable, not something convenient. Maya's eyes filled. What happens to Hale? Daniel's expression stayed neutral. An investigation. Bernice's voice was steady. Justice, not humiliation, but no protection for harm. Maya exhaled, a shaky sound. I was scared. Bernice's eyes softened. Courage doesn't mean you aren't afraid. It means you do what's right anyway. For a moment, the room held a reverent stillness. Then Bernice whispered a sentence like an anchor dropped into deep water. The Lord loves justice, and he will not forsake his saints. Daniel received a message, glanced down, and nodded. Media Council is ready. If we release the memo and the video together, their statement collapses. Maya looked at Bernice. Right now? Bernice rose slowly, cane steady, and met Maya's gaze. Right now, she said. No shouting, just evidence. Daniel tapped the trackpad. A secure transfer window opened. Files attached. Timestamps verified. One click away from daylight. Maya's throat tightened. Once this goes out, there's no going back. Bernice's voice remained gentle. We're not going back. We're going forward. Into accountability. And with that, the truth left the room. Outside, departures continued as if nothing happened. But inside the company, clocks sped up today, and excuses began to die, fast, quietly. If you have ever been blamed for something you didn't do, just because someone in power decided you were easy to label, then what happens next will make you gasp. Don't forget to like and subscribe and stay with Dignity Voices to follow how the truth turns into justice. Because in Scene 6, the board won't just face a scandal, they'll face a buyout with terms so strict it forces real change from the cockpit to the boardroom. The airline tried to outrun the story. It couldn't outrun the footage. By mid-morning, the clip was everywhere. Captain Hale's voice booming down the aisle. The command, get out. Bernice's cane tapping as she was escorted off. And that smug murmur, problem solved, caught like a signature. The public saw what the press release tried to blur. No danger, no chaos, no non-compliance. Just power enjoying itself because it believed it would never pay. At headquarters, the crisis war room pulsed with screens and panic. PR refreshed feeds until their fingers cramped. Legal stacked complaint files like sandbags. Operations argued with call centers. Finance stared at a falling valuation line as if it might stop out of mercy. We need a warmer statement, the PR director snapped. Empathy. A promise to investigate. Legal shot back. Stop using the word safety. With that video, safety looks like a shield. A board member dialed in, voice sharp. Where is the captain? In the air, operations said. Ground him when he lands, the board member replied. Not for optics, liability. The CEO bristled. We don't ground captains because social media is bored. Another director cut in, colder. We ground captains when sponsors pause ads and lenders read covenants. Across town in a quiet conference room with no airline logos, Bernice sat with Daniel Price and Maya. No shouting, no spectacle. Just documents, timestamps, and calm that made the chaos look childish. Daniel had the memo on one screen, the video on another. Maya's hands were clasped tight. "They'll say I stole it," she whispered. "They'll say I edited it." Bernice's voice stayed soft. "They'll say anything that keeps their system." Daniel's phone buzzed. He read, then looked up. "The board chair wants a call. He says he wants to resolve this privately before it becomes bigger." Bernice's eyes didn't move. "Private is how rot survives." Daniel nodded. "We control the call. We set conditions. We speak in facts." The speakerphone clicked on at 2:07 p.m. The board chair's voice arrived polished and exhausted. "Mrs. Coleman, I want to apologize for what you experienced. That is not who we are." Bernice answered, "It is who you are when you think the person you're harming has no power." A careful pivot followed. "We're prepared to offer compensation and rebooking." "I'm not negotiating a voucher," Bernice said. "I'm negotiating accountability." The CEO jumped in, tight and defensive. "This has become a media frenzy. We can't let outsiders dictate operations." Daniel leaned forward, voice even. "We represent the Coleman Cooperative and affiliates. We've been acquiring shares through a holding structure for months. Today accelerated the timeline. Your valuation is falling, your debt is heavy, and your exposure is rising. You need stabilizing capital." While Daniel spoke, Bernice listened to the pauses more than the words. She could hear the board's fear in the silence. Fear of lawsuits, of headlines, of finally being named. She rested her palm on her folder, steadying herself, and whispered to Maya, "They trained everyone to obey the loudest voice. Today we make them obey the right one, without raising ours." Silence. Then the chair, smaller now. "You're acquiring the airline?" Bernice replied. "I'm rescuing it from what you allowed it to become." The CEO scoffed. "Opportunistic." Bernice's tone didn't sharpen. "Opportunistic is humiliating an elder, then hiding behind a script." Daniel read a single-page term sheet into the call like a judge announcing a sentence. Clean, lawful, unavoidable. Term 1. Immediate suspension of Captain Hale pending an independent investigation led by an external firm. Term 2. A passenger dignity office with authority to override station managers during removals and deny non-compliance labels without evidence. Term 3. Disputed removals require recorded instructions and documented refusal. Cabin announcements must be retained in secure storage. Term 4. Whistleblower protections and funded counsel for employees who report misconduct, starting with Ms. Maya. No retaliation, no blacklisting. Term 5. Revised incident reporting. No standardized slander. If a passenger is labeled disruptive, the instruction refused must be stated, time-stamped, and corroborated. Term 6. Board-level oversight of discrimination complaints with quarterly reporting to shareholders, plus a public accountability dashboard. The chair tried to interrupt. "Some of that is unprecedented." "So was what your captain did," Bernice said. The CEO pushed back. "Quarterly reporting will destroy our reputation." Daniel replied, "Your reputation is already bleeding. Transparency is the tourniquet." On the airline side, voices leaked. Someone whispering about sponsor emails. Someone asking if the stock would trip a covenant. The chair muted for a moment. Panic still seeped through in hurried footsteps. When he unmuted, his voice had lost its shine. A different director came on, quieter. "If we accept reforms, can we keep roots? Keep jobs?" Bernice's gaze softened. "Not for executives, but for crews. That is the point. I won't punish workers. For leadership's choices, I will protect what feeds them." The chair returned. "And the captain?" Bernice paused. "He will face a fair investigation. If he violated policy or law, he will face consequences. If he harmed people, he will not be protected. But I will not humiliate him for entertainment. Justice is not cruelty with better lighting." The CEO exhaled, frustrated. "You're forcing our hand." Bernice replied, "You forced mine when you tried to erase me." Daniel finished, "Sign the memorandum by 6 p.m., or we walk. Then you face the market alone, and every headline will ask why you refused reform when it was offered." Silence, then calculation. The chair finally said, "Send the documents." When the call ended, Maya released a breath she'd been holding for hours. "Did we just corner them?" Bernice looked at her kindly. "No, the truth cornered them. We're simply standing where it can't be ignored." Daniel's phone buzzed with a new message. He read it and nodded once. "They're drafting signatures." Outside the window, a jet lifted into bright afternoon, clean and quiet, like nothing had happened. Bernice watched it climb and whispered, "Let the world see what change looks like." The airline's headquarters didn't look like a place that could break. Glass walls, polished floors, a logo that promised comfort in one curved letter. But inside, the building felt like a body catching a fever. Too hot, too fast, suddenly aware of every weak spot. By sunrise on the next news cycle, the board chair's private line became useless. Sponsors didn't ask questions anymore. They paused campaigns. Lenders didn't monitor anymore. They demanded covenant calls. Employees didn't hear rumors anymore. They watched the video on loop in break rooms, lips pressed tight, realizing the company had been lying about what it rewarded. In the war room, PR tried to reframe the story for the fifth time. They typed safety, then deleted it. Typed misunderstanding, then deleted that too. Every sentence sounded like a man trying to talk his way out of a recording. Legal dropped a binder on the table that thudded like a gavel. "Complaints," counsel said, flipping tabs. "Captain Hale has more than we were told. Some were downgraded, some were closed the same day." Ops stared at the paper like it might bite. "How?" a compliance officer answered, voice thin. "Standardized phrasing. Same manager sign-off, same classification code." On the screen at the end of the room, a segment replayed Bernice in the corridor, Hale's shout in the aisle, and then the leaked customer resolution playbook highlighted in yellow. Under it, a banner scrolled, "Internal memo suggests pattern of optics first removals." In a small conference room on the 22nd floor, Maya sat beside two attorneys Daniel had assigned. A cup of tea cooled untouched. She kept expecting a manager to storm in and call her disloyal to threaten her job. Instead, her phone buzzed with Daniel's message. "You're protected. Speak only through counsel." Her fear didn't disappear, but it finally had rules around it. Across town, Bernice sat in a quiet room with warm lighting and no corporate slogans. Daniel laid fresh papers in front of her, updated terms, a revised timeline, and a short market note. "They're bleeding," he said. "They know it." Bernice nodded. "Good. Bleeding proves they're mortal." At 10 a.m., the board convened behind closed doors. The chair opened with the only truth that fit. "We are in danger." A director spoke first, voice sharp with denial. "This is social media hysteria. We apologize. Pay the passenger and move on." Another director snapped back. "You can't move on from a memo teaching staff to label people disruptive early. That isn't PR. That's culture." The general counsel added, "With the playbook authenticated, plaintiffs will argue systemic misconduct. That's not one lawsuit. That's a flood." The CEO tried to regain control. "We should defend the captain. He has discretion." The compliance officer looked up, eyes tired. "Discretion isn't a license to humiliate, and we incentivized speed over dignity. That's on us." A long pause followed. Then the chair asked the question everyone feared. "Who approved the playbook?" Silence answered, thick with complicity. By noon, resignations began dropping into inboxes. First a vice president, then a regional manager placed on leave, then an internal alert. All incident classifications under review. The machine was being forced to look at its own gears. That afternoon, Hale's aircraft landed. He walked through the terminal with his cap on and chin high, expecting allies. Instead, he met stares. Some furious, some ashamed, some simply relieved to not be him. A supervisor stopped him with a badge access card and a voice that refused to bend. "Captain Hale, report to HR. Effective now, you're relieved of duty pending investigation." Hale scoffed. "Ridiculous. I kept order." The supervisor repeated, "Pending investigation," like a door locking. At 4:30 p.m., the board chair called Daniel again. His voice had lost its polish. "We'll sign," he said. "We need stability. We need the acquisition. We accept the reforms." Daniel's reply was calm. "Then you'll also need a real apology." "A statement," the chair tried. "Not a statement," Daniel corrected. "An executive apology with corrective actions attached." He glanced at Bernice and handed her the phone. Bernice's voice was quiet enough to make the chair lean in. "You didn't expect me," she said. "That's the problem. You didn't expect my humanity. You didn't expect my preparation. You didn't expect your own paper trail." The chair swallowed. "What do you want from us?" "Truth," Bernice answered, "and the courage to change." She ended the call and stood, cane steady. Maya would be protected. Workers would have safeguards. The board would sign because the world had forced their hand. None of it would erase the humiliation in the aisle, but it would keep it from becoming routine. Before the ink was even dry on the memo of understanding, the company tried one last trick. Soften the edges without changing the center. PR drafted an apology that said, "If anyone felt offended." Bernice rejected it through Daniel in 3 words. "Name the harm." Minutes later, the draft changed. It named Bernice. It named the captain's command. It named the playbook. And it promised a new metric: dignity measured as seriously as departure time. Down in operations, supervisors received a new directive. No removals without documented instruction. No coded labels. No quiet closures. In the break rooms, the video stopped being gossip and became a warning. People who had stayed silent for years began forwarding old emails, old logs, old closed complaints to the new review inbox, as if the building itself was finally exhaling the truth it had swallowed. Maya watched the flood begin and understood. This wasn't just her story anymore. It was a reckoning for all. Bernice looked out at the runway where jets rose and fell like breath and whispered one sentence, anchored like a nail in a storm. "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear?" Outside, the logo still shone. Inside, the system behind it finally started to collapse, so something clean could be built in its place, beginning tomorrow. 3 months later, Gate C14 looked ordinary to strangers and transformed to anyone who remembered. The stanchions were reset, a small camera sat by the scanner, and a new sign hung above the podium. "Dignity first. Escalation. Hotline active. Not to shame. Passengers. To protect truth." Bernice arrived early, cane in hand, scarf neat, expression calm. She didn't come for revenge. She came to see whether change was real. Maya met her with a new badge, Passenger Integrity Liaison, and a look that held pride and a lingering ache. "It's ready," Maya said. Bernice nodded. "Then we'll see it work." Across the terminal, executives gathered before a press backdrop. The CEO stood with the board chair and the new head of compliance. The slogan under the logo had changed: "We fly with respect." The CEO read, voice steady, "Today we issue an executive apology to Mrs. Bernice Coleman for the humiliating removal she endured on Flight 218. The captain's conduct was wrong. Our gate response was wrong. Our internal practices were wrong. We failed to protect a passenger's dignity, and we failed to live up to our duty." No if you felt, no excuses, just naming. The board chair stepped in. "This is not reputation. Management, this is repair. Under a settlement agreement finalized this week, we are funding an independent passenger dignity office, expanding accessibility services, and publishing quarterly transparency reports. We will document instructions, preserve recordings, and protect whistleblowers. We are committing to brand accountability, measurable standards with enforceable consequences. Near the podium, a laminated card listed passenger rights in plain language, with a QR code to the hotline and a promise: you will be heard. A supervisor demonstrated the new protocol to a trainee: record the instruction, offer options, call the dignity office before any removal. Even the boarding announcement had changed. We will treat every traveler with respect. If you need help, ask. We're here. Behind the scenes, reforms were already moving. Managers who buried complaints were removed, accessibility staffing doubled, and every crew signed a dignity pledge before flying. Maya's name sat on a protected whistleblower register, and a scholarship fund for workers was seeded from bonuses. Bernice didn't smile, but her shoulders loosened, like a knot releasing. A ripple moved through the crowd when Hale appeared at the edge of the scene, no longer in stripes, just a man in a suit that didn't carry his old swagger. His investigation ended the way evidence demanded: termination and a licensing review. The airline didn't parade him. It simply stopped protecting him. That was the difference between vengeance and justice. Hale's eyes found Bernice. The old arrogance tried to rise, then fell under the weight of cameras, compliance, and employees who no longer flinched. He looked away. Maya let out a slow breath. He wanted the aisle to be his kingdom. And he forgot, Bernice said, that kingdoms built on cruelty always fall. Boarding began. The gate agent, new, trained, deliberate, stepped from behind the podium and addressed Bernice clearly. "Mrs. Coleman, your assistance is here. Would you prefer an aisle chair or extra time to board?" "Extra time," Bernice said. The agent signaled a gentle pause. No sarcasm, no coded looks. The camera captured the moment, not as spectacle, but as record. Decency on purpose. As Bernice moved down the jet bridge, the memory tried to chase her. The shout, the pointing finger, the cabin's silence. But the present met it with something stronger. Structured kindness that didn't depend on mood. Systems, at last, doing their job. At the door, a flight attendant said, "Welcome aboard, Ms. Coleman." Not a performance, a practice. Bernice reached her row, sat, and looked out at the wing as sunlight brushed the metal like a blessing. Maya settled nearby, still shaken. "I keep thinking I should have spoken sooner," Maya admitted. "You spoke when it mattered," Bernice said. "Integrity costs fear before it gives safety." Maya's eyes glistened. "I didn't do it alone." "No," Bernice agreed. "Truth rarely travels alone. It finds partners." As the plane pushed back, Bernice rested her palm on her leather folder, now filled with policies, signatures, and the new Dignity Charter. Not trophies, tools. She whispered, "Blessed are those who act justly, who always do what is right." And the aircraft rolled forward, not as an escape, but as a sign. A company can change when it stops choosing comfort over conscience. Family. This isn't only about an airline. It's about how the world tries to decide who deserves patience, softness, and a voice. Hale is the kind of antagonist we meet in many forms. Someone who mistakes authority for righteousness, who uses policy as a weapon, who believes humiliation is order. But power without love becomes cruelty, and cruelty always demands a receipt. Bernice is quiet power. She didn't win by screaming louder. She won by staying steady, gathering truth, and demanding a system that protects the next person. That is justice when it's clean, not revenge, but correction. Scripture teaches that God loves justice and calls us to do what is right, love mercy, and walk humbly. Bernice walked humbly and still refused to accept a lie as her identity. If you've ever been shamed, mislabeled, or treated like you were less than, remember, your worth is not decided by someone's tone, position, or prejudice. In God's eyes, you are seen. When you can't fight with strength, you can fight with truth, patience, And wisdom. The Lord defends the oppressed, and he lifts those who feel small. So here's the question. When you have power, even small power, do you use it to crush or to cover? Do you make people afraid or do you make them safe? If this story moved you, type dignity in the comments and share where you're watching from. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay with Dignity Voices, because the next story will remind you again, humility can be mighty and justice can land softly.